The Twins have a new manager and a bunch of player moves to sort through. So we brought in Zone Coverage's Theo Tollefson to break it all down. So get strapped in and get Locked On Twins.
You are Locked On Twins, your daily Minnesota Twins podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, we're back at it. It's Locked On Twins. I'm your host, Brandon Warren. Been covering the Twins for 15 years-ish, watching them for about twice that long. And I'm delighted to be hosting today's episode. Thank you for making Locked On Twins your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. You can find my written work at Access Twins Newsletter, Daily Norseman. You can find our friend Theo's written work at Zone Coverage. I'll introduce him in just a moment here, but we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which means we're your team every day. And we love to hear from you. If you are an everydayer, hang out in the chat, hang out in the comments on YouTube. I'll put polls up there during videos for the premieres and that sort of fun stuff. Again, thank you so much for hanging out. Give us a 5-star review, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And as I noted, our guest, Mr. Theo Tollefson, widely critically acclaimed for his appearances on the Locked On Twins postcast. How we doing, man?
I don't know if it's critically acclaimed, but it's going well. We finally got a manager locked in for the Twins, so there's at least something to work with as the offseason is about to kick off, probably on Monday for sure. We'll see if we get Game 7 of the World Series over the weekend, but it looks like Toronto's going to be locking this one up on Friday if they can.
Let's hope so, yeah. I would love to see Toronto win. That I saw someone say, "Oh, it's the team that the Twins swept 2 years ago." Well, yes and no. We can discuss that another time. But anyway, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. So download that app today. On today's show, we have the hiring of Derek Shelton, which we will get thoughts on. I shared a long, bumbling 40 minutes of stream of consciousness thoughts last night. We'll get Theo's thoughts. He wrote an article for Zone Coverage that went up this morning. We also have two pieces of Theo's that are very, very pertinent to where the Twins are going to be as the World Series comes to an end. The outrights, and there's some teams who have started doing that. In fact, I believe the Red Sox have already outrighted former Twins reliever Jose De Leon. There's a few names there's a strategy to all of it, but by and large, teams do it after the World Series ends. It's when the frenzy begins. And the second part of that is that teams have to add minor leaguers to their 40-man roster to protect them from the Rule 5 draft, which takes place usually as the GM, whatever, people are scrambling to get out of town at the end of the winter meetings. We'll talk about that as well. But first, Derek Shelton. Before I say anything, I want to get your thoughts through your lens without any of my influence taking over anything you say. I want to know exactly what your thoughts are.
Well, they went with the candidate they're most familiar with in hiring him. Obviously, James Rosen was with the organization a little bit longer than him as a hitting coach, but in terms of just, familiarity with these players and how the front office operates as a bench coach, Shelton was their go-to familiarity. So there are obviously still going to be some changes with the coaching staff, but just based off of this hiring, I feel like most of the guys already here are probably going to remain the same. And that's kind of the vibe we're getting. But, it seems like on the surface, this is just someone who's going to be filling the spot for the next 2 to 3 years as they reconfigure this roster and figure out who the next core of this is to make this a competitive team. But I think we will want to be proven wrong in that aspect because he was kind of handed unfair slate in Pittsburgh, a real hard challenge that any manager really would have a hard time trying to get into shape with how that front office operates on a much tighter budget than the Twins front office will this offseason. So hopefully, as things stand right now, I think Shelton has a better balance of talent to work with the Twins organization, both with the guys at the major league level and who could be coming up from the minors as the season goes on next year. So hopefully that can help give him a better chance to, win more than 76 games in a season, which was the most he ever won in 2 seasons with the Pittsburgh Pirates. But records aren't everything. So, but, when we were at the end of season presser that Falvey and Zoll had, Falvey pretty much iterated they wanted someone who's going to be able to develop the players as they come up through the majors, which at some point, obviously you never stop changing who you are and developing as a player and adjusting to the game, but just focusing on that specifically more than, how these guys are developing through the minors to get here. I think that just speaks volumes to what they want with Shelton, because he was doing a lot of that in Pittsburgh and there wasn't as much success. He's a former hitting coach. He had a good run with the Rays from 2010 to 2016, and then Cleveland 05 to 09. So there's a lot of good track records with him working as a hitting coach. There wasn't as much in terms of like his managerial influence overlapping with his hitting coach with guys in Pittsburgh. I think this model and that was Brian Reynolds, because if you look at his numbers from his first season as a rookie in 2019 and then what he was doing in Shelton's tenure with the Pirates, you could definitely kind of draw some lines together and see the correlation of like that's still there, and hopefully that can carry over with a lot of guys here. Now, the only player who is still around from when he was the bench coach with the Twins is Byron Buxton, and I think we said this on Destination's show last night, our podcast that we do affiliated with Twins Daily. It's if Buxton is a resounding yes for Shelton coming back, then that should hopefully set a good tone for the rest of the clubhouse and what the players are hoping to get from their new manager.
Yeah, a few things to hash out. I said this off the air. I should have mentioned last night. From my experience, it was almost like if you had Fred Flintstone as your manager, just a very likable, blue-collar kind of guy that I think Twins fans are going to actually grow to really like. And I did, and it's not a great comparison, I will concede, but Joe Torre managed like 1,900 games before he took over the Yankees, and his average record was a 76 win pace before the Yankees. Now, after the Yankees and with the Dodgers, it was like 94, and everybody knows how good those teams were. But, and as we're talking, Dustin Morse announces officially Derek Shelton has been named manager. Trying not to get off track here. It doesn't mean that he's Joe Torre by any stretch of the mind, but there's still so much we don't know about him as a manager, and that it's really just, you almost have to wipe that slate clean. Slate, not a pun on the Fred Flintstone, but not a bad turn of phrase either. I just think Twins fans need to give him the chance to be Derek Shelton, not some extension of Rocco Baldelli. And here are some facts. This is the first time the Twins have hired a retread manager since, Rocco Baldelli, first-time manager. Paul Molitor, first-time manager. Ron Gardenhire.
A retread, I want to say it goes all the way back to maybe Billy Gardner or Gene Mauch in the late 70s.
Billy Martin. I mean, it goes a ways back. This is changing of how the Twins have handled things. So it's not same old Twins. And I also think it was someone they could sell the vision on because he'd been here before, with the idea that, too, if this doesn't go well, and I said this, I think Derek Falvey being quote unquote fired in this instance a year from now would be, you're the team president, but you have no say over player personnel anymore. Like, I don't think they necessarily want to get rid of him as the business guy. I don't think they need to do that. But if they say, we're bringing in someone else new on player personnel, you don't do that anymore. We don't even know how much he does in the first place anymore. Jeremy Zoll's gone. Like, if they say all those guys are gone, you didn't give someone like Ryan Flaherty a raw deal because he only got 1 year. You didn't give someone like Scott Service a raw deal. Now, it would be a raw deal to Derek Shelton, but he was already unemployed, which I guess it applies to Service, but Service is going to want to get into a job that he can dig his teeth into. And if the Twins weren't going to allow that, okay. Flaherty is going to want that idea that, like, I got 4 years here before I'm under any real strong scrutiny. Shelton got parts of 6 years with the Pirates. If you're only promised one, like, look at Kurt Suzuki with the Angels, 1 year deal. Like, what are you even doing? Like, that's just a terrifying proposition. Managers never want to manage on a 1 year deal. I read Joe Maddon's book, and even after he won the World Series, a couple years later, he's on a 1 year deal, and they just knew it was going to be done. I think it was the perfect storm for Derek Shelton. The lazy take is same old yes man. I think all I'm saying is give Shelty a chance.
Yeah, I think there's the freeze or burn aspect of because he was a coach while Falvey was early in his tenure in the Twins front office. There's just going to be the same old. But again, I think we all have to give Derek Shelton a chance. And as you mentioned, he's a very likable guy among the players, great communicator. I mean, you look back at the players he was working with and turned into success stories during his tenure with the Guardians and the Rays. I mean, you think about way back to like prime Grady Sizemore. We're talking Travis Hafner's really hot season, Johnny Peralta, Evan Longoria. We could just keep listing off names he worked with as a hitting coach that really went well. So, I mean, the track record's there, and he definitely deserves the opportunity. We'll see what this first year brings, and then I would have to assume, unless it goes really bad, he's locked in for probably another 2 seasons after that. So,
and it's money they'll eat. Managerial money's not the same as eating even.
No, definitely not.
Back end starter money. So criminal justice college graduate, by the way. So that's an interesting thing. We talk about former catchers, we talk about former whatever, but criminal justice, I kind of like it. Well, let's do this. Let's pause. We have our first break here. And then when we come back, you wrote, we're going to talk first about the outrights and who we think the Twins will drop from the 40-man roster, in addition to the free agents who drop. But quick, our first break. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every single day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time than now to jump in on the action. And if you haven't tried yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play Prize Picks anywhere they operate, including California, Texas, and Georgia. It's my go-to for NFL Sundays, NFL Mondays, NBA tip-offs, you name it, they've got it. I like picking my favorite players, whether it's Anthony Edwards, Justin Jefferson, any of the local guys or the national guys like Patrick Mahomes, Stephen Curry, and see how your or my predictions pan out. Plus, if any of your players leave early with an injury, the injury reboot feature saves your lineup from a loss. Download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, off here and running. Second segment, Locked On Twins, locked on with Theo Tollefson of Zone Coverage and Destination The Show Pod on Twins Daily. So a lot of fun stuff. Highly recommend you check his work out at both of those places. Not most recently, I guess. I edit you at Zone Coverage, and you've written, I think, 3 pieces since then. In fact, our lovely leader.
There's been a lot to.
Yeah. Our lovely leader, Tom Pryor, said that Theo Bot is back, meaning you're a workhorse again. Not that you weren't before, but you are uniquely equipped to cover these 2 subjects, especially as someone who kind of splits time between the press boxes at CHS and Target Field. And so what I like is, too, it's usually a good way for me to, if I create some sort of narrative in my mind, like, oh, Patrick Winkle is a defense first catcher, or just a random. I can verify it, or at least shape my narratives by reading the stuff you write too, because I don't get to put my eyes on the AAA guys nearly as much as I do the big league guys. So we got to, though, put some eyes on a lot of guys from the minor leagues this year in the big leagues. Obviously, after the deadline, it was the deadline was a bloodbath. I don't think it's any sort of shocker to call it that. But you have the Twins 40 at 39 right now, and it'll be 40 with Roden once he's activated. So then it just becomes cut, paste. We'll talk about the cuts first. Now, free agents who will fall off the list, I guess I haven't thought or looked at it that much because they've had so many young guys. Yeah,
it's just Christian Vazquez who is in that group.
I mean, would have been Willie Castro, would have been this guy, would have been that guy. And
but with who remains,
Any part of you interested in bringing back Vazquez if it's cheap?
It would be cheap, and I know he was someone who has interest in coaching and managing once his career is all said and done.
He'd be good at it too, I think.
He would be very good at it. A lot of former catchers are very good at it. Scott Service being one of them. But
I just watched a game where the Twins played against Scott Service. It was the first ever Twins game at Wrigley, which would have been before you were born in 1997.
Just a couple years.
Yeah, not by much, but it was the first game the Twins played at Wrigley, and one of the last games that Harry Carey did because he passed away that offseason. And
that's true.
Very interesting game. Twins won that game, but the 97 Twins were no bueno.
Well, I mean, it was not. It was more swan song of like Paul Molitor and whatnot. So, but yeah, Vazquez being the only free agent, that just brings it down to 39, and then if you count Roden being activated. So they're going to have a lot of guys who are kind of just these roster space fillers after the trade deadline that are definitely not going to be brought back around. And you knew it, especially when they were being thrown out there. And, just one example for sure, Thomas Hatch, a waiver claim who just was there to eat innings out of the bullpen. He's one of the guys I mentioned in this piece because, again, he was there to just fill the role until the season was over. And, some of these guys definitely weren't going to be doing that. Brooks Kriske got lit up. Noah Davis got lit up, and they were gone well before these decisions were made or have to be made, I should say, because they were cut off from the 40-man, sent back down to St. Paul for the rest of the year, and released as soon as the season was over. So, those are the type of guys you're going to be expecting, at least on the pitching side, to just be cut and new spots will open up. How they plan to replace them, whether it's Rule 5 picks being added to be protected from the roster or potentially signing a, cheap relief free agent or two to fill some of those bullpen spots, because I think it's safe to say Cole Sands and Cody Funderburk are the only two guys who are locked in to be in the bullpen next season when spring training comes around, just with who they have right now. I think Justin Topa, I lean a little more likely as a yes right now, just because I'm a little more higher on his upside than most others, but the rest, it's really hard to say.
I think the Twins are uniquely benefited by going into that minor league free agent group of relievers, and the Twins have got a history of finding guys, Jared Burton, Casey Fiend, that sort of thing. Not this current group, but you find guys like this all the time. Opportunity. The Twins are going to be able to sell opportunity. So even if or when they take Genesis Cabrera, I think it's Genesis. Even if they take Genesis Cabrera off the 40, if you say, hey, look, you throw 96, and if you have an idea of where it's going, you can be pretty decent. Sign a minor league deal, show us in spring training. The Twins will have probably a preferable destination for a lot of relief guys who are looking for opportunity. That might include guys like big leaguers, Taylor Rogers, or anyone for an opportunity that maybe they wouldn't get on a better team. In addition to guys on the minor league side, I'm sure they've got their list. The bullpen and how they build it is going to be fascinating. But as you said, you had, I believe, the subtractions of Misevich, Hatch. I guess I could pull it up here. I mean,
Cabrera were those three. I was borderline on putting Michael.
Kreidler, Tonkin, though you did not have Tonkin. You had Gasper, Miranda, who I don't know what they're going to do there, because it makes sense to dump him. But then again, if they dump all these guys, I think you have something like 8 or 9.
9.
So 9 gets you to 30. 30. And you added 3 or 4, I think, for sure.
6
I think
for Rule 5, but to 6? Focus on
Okay, because I think too maybe what'll happen is like a Johnny Pareda might survive the initial wave and then get DFA'd if they sign someone in the offseason. Some of these guys might survive the initial wave and then the protections, but be casualties during the offseason. Now, a lot of it depends on who do you want to let hit free agency at the beginning of free agency, like a good soldier situation, whatever.
Yeah.
But I didn't really disagree with anybody on your list. I think Johnny Pareda's 75th, 80th percentile outcome, though, is a decent big league backup. You know, he did enough
for sure,
small stretch where I wouldn't hate him as the backup, but I would like him as my third catcher down in St. Paul with Christian Vazquez backing up just a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair assessment. For Pareda, I think his biggest issue is he just had a struggle throwing out base runners, and that's why they might be more willing to take a flyer on these younger guys who are just sitting at AAA for the last couple of years and need an opportunity in the big leagues. But if they're not calling them up at this point, shows what they don't trust in them. So, I mean, we'll see. But yeah, I think Miranda will be the biggest name talking point in there. I think just based off of how he performed down the stretch in St. Paul, as he told me at the end of the season, that, you know, his swing had been off all year, and that was the cause, at least in his own words, of all his struggles this year. He's out of options, and with the year he has really no trade value, and he will be a fun experiment for another team to pick up. And that's why I didn't include like Edouard Julien in the same article, because Julien, same situation, out of options. However, he's shown enough. I feel like you can get some return. I'm not saying a big return or anything maybe exciting. Yeah, pretty much a AAA reliever who you could try out in the bullpen during spring training.
Lab. Yep.
Exactly. So that's why Julien was not included in this. Another name I didn't include is Ryan Fitzgerald, because he is very well liked in that clubhouse. I mean, he could still be likely cut and then re-signed to a minor league deal and stay here. And a lot of these guys are the same. And I said that about their most recent waiver claim, Brian. How do I say his last name? Kreidler, yeah. He's like a $138 career hitter in the majors. I mean, yeah, you're definitely going to come off the 40 man and then stash him in AAA as just extra depth. So yeah, 9 guys are going to be gone. I think some of the names are still toss-ups that I did or didn't include. Some could stay, others could go, but we will see.
Let me reread your list and then ask you, which one gave you the most trepidation? Deshaun Kiersey Jr., Carson McCusker, Ryan Kreidler, Jose Miranda, Mickey Gasper, Johnny Pareda, Anthony Misevich, Thomas Hatch, Genesis Cabrera. Which one were you most like, I don't know about this one?
Probably Gasper, just because they went out of the way to trade for him. They know what he's capable of doing. They do like using him at other positions too, even if he's not as strong there. I think he is perfect case of, you know, if he's outrighted, then re-signed to a minor league deal. That's more than likely will happen. But I think he's the most likely amongst that group that I put together to stay.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Let's take our last pause. We will come back and discuss the additions, because that's also a big thing. If you go on Roster Resource, they have a tab that says options or R5 status. R5 means that they are eligible for the Rule 5 draft, including, I'm wondering if the Twins will take somebody, because this is going to be a Twins team that's going to need a Aberson Castellano type reliever, possibly, to have a callback from a year ago. So we'll talk about all that here in just a moment. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than at FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Didn't have one in the bag for the Wolves against Denver, but if you think you see one coming, hey, get some of that action on FanDuel. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. If you've seen people talk about SGPs, that's what they're talking about. And you can get a shot at a bigger payout. Keeps every game exciting, especially when it's your team making that late-game push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet hits. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, we are rolling. Final segment. Locked On Twins. Theo Tollefson from Zone Coverage hanging out with us. And your list of additions to the 40-man roster, I'm just going to roll down it and then we'll discuss it. Andrew Morris, pitcher. Another pitcher, and Connor Prielipp, probably the most exciting name on the list, in my opinion. Gabriel Gonzalez, I think still an underrated hitter in this farm system. Hendry Mendez, who came over in the Bader trade, which could prove to be a pretty nice little get for a guy who is going to be a free agent. Ricardo Olivar, I'll admit I don't know much about him as a catcher, so we'll talk about that. You have John Klein, Twin Cities native, who I believe had a cup of coffee with the Saints this last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it was a little bumpy, wasn't it, at AAA?
His first start, he had jitters pitching back home, but after that, he was really good down the stretch.
Right.
So
I mean, and you draw a comp to Mr. Everyday Louis Varland, which I think is an interesting one, especially with the velo jumping like it did with Louis Varland. So you're adding 2 pitchers, 2 outfielders. Oh, who's the other pitcher I'm missing?
Klein, Prielipp.
Klein. Klein at the bottom. My mistake. So a name I didn't see was Aaron Sabato. Was there any thought whatsoever there? I know, he made it to AAA. The batting average isn't there. This just feels like another first rounder that just didn't really turn out. Is there a Brent Rooker factor here that anybody is concerned about?
I don't know if it's a Brent Rooker factor, really. I think, guy's going to be 27 next season and has never played in the majors. And even though he has first base depth, that's not really an appealing thing for teams to take a flyer on in the Rule 5 draft. They want their, pitchers like Travis Adams, if he was available this last year. I think any team would have taken a flyer on him just because, the guy who's going to be 25 on opening day and has never pitched in the majors, but, is a decent AAA starter and could definitely be an effective weapon in a bullpen. That is definitely more the type of player people want to go for than Aaron Sabato. But I think one name I left off that some people have brought up is Kendry Rojas, who they acquired in the Louis Varland trade. I left him off because of how poor he pitched down the stretch in AAA. I think he allowed 31 runs and 32 in the third innings. He's still young. He's an effective left-handed starter in the minors up until he got into AAA. But it's just so hard to see how you add him to the 40-man after that poor performance down the stretch. And I think a lot of teams would want to see more effectiveness out of him before they take a flyer on him. So I think he is going to be left unprotected, but could be proven wrong. I think Morris and Prielipp are absolute locks for being added no matter what. Morris is definitely, I'd say, their top guy who hasn't made their major league debut yet. That is a starter that they could put in this rotation when needed. And Prielipp, he's definitely going to be the best left-handed pitcher they have in a long while once he gets called up. But how he's going to be used, whether that's starting or relieving, that's still yet to be seen.
Best left-hander since Dallas Keuchel for sure.
Yeah, we could say that, sure. But yeah, Gabby Gonzalez too. I mean, I think it's the same thing with the ceiling Emmanuel Rodriguez has for himself, and if he's available, any team's going to try to grab him. They can. So you got to keep him. Mendez, really great at AA. I think, if you can get a lot more, say 6-7 really good seasons out of Mendez for his major league career with the Twins, that's a steal of a deal for giving up Harrison Bader. So you got to protect that interest. Olivar is probably the one who's least likely to be added of the names I put in there, but I put him there because they need catching depth for the time being. He's a decent hitter defensively. It's I'd say half step better than what we saw from Gasper and Pareda behind the plate down the stretch this season. So I think he is just more so they need the catching depth beyond Ryan Jeffers, and he is close to major league ready and a better hitter than Noah Cardenas and Patrick Winkle, who are still sitting at AAA right now and also Rule 5 eligible, but definitely not going to be picked by other teams. So I think even last year he was still Rule 5 eligible and no one took a flyer on him. So it's probably the same thing again, and it could be much different this next year. So we'll see what happens.
I have some trepidation with the Kendry Rojas take, but at the same time, I'm looking here and he's barely pitched above high A in his minor league career. He was absolutely flat out insanely dominant, but it was 18 2/3 innings. I almost wonder if the Twins shouldn't have pushed him back to AA, honestly, with how bad. But with that said, I just think they'd have to protect their interest from the Varland trade. So we'll see. Another one, though, that is interesting that I think a year from now we will have a lot more clarity on is Andy Lugo, who was a really, really nice hitter in A-ball. That was the Jorge Alcala trade, if I'm not mistaken. And then the Red Sox dumped Alcala, and I don't think they got anything for him when he went to the Cardinals. I think it was just a waiver claim. So Andy Lugo, a little too far off for someone to take a stab at. Rojas, teams have definitely grabbed guys like Rojas in the Rule 5.
Yeah.
And I think it's a weird rule. I think the Twins could, in theory, Rule 5 Rojas too if they got to the draft and were worried he'd get picked, right? Like I think you can. I think it's a weird thing that it's maybe happened once before. Maybe I'm just making this up in my own brain. But,
yeah, I'm not sure about that.
But either way, the Rojas is the only one that would kind of prick up my ears. And even still, made one start at AAA, which with Toronto is
Buffalo.
Yeah, Dunedin is lower down. They used to be in, I think, Vegas. I'm glad to get out of there for their pitcher stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But he made one start there, and it was fine. You know, gave up some homers, took the loss. But I mean, one start, you can't really tell anything. And then, strikeouts were there, but the walks, like
those have been really bad for him.
I think he's the kind of guy you send back to AA and say, look, we saw what you did in 18 2/3 innings at AA in the Toronto system. Let's just slow play it. He's only going to be in his age 23 season.
Yeah.
That's still average-ish for that level. He was definitely way younger than the AAA average. So people overreacting to how he fared, not you, but people saying, oh, this is a bust trade. One, didn't look at that. Louis had moments in down the stretch and even in the playoffs where he's been hit pretty hard too.
Yeah.
And he's a reliever. He's just flat out a reliever. So yeah, that's interesting. Mendez is one I'm curious about. I know that prospect types or minor league types don't love comps, but does he remind you of anybody, or is he like, a corner outfielder, good bat, a lot of doubles? Do you have any kind of feel for him?
Not quite yet, because I haven't seen much of him since he got over here. I mean, he is their prize there in the Arizona Fall League right now, and they definitely want to see what more they can get out of him. And he had a decent start there so far. We'll see what else is to come. But I think out of all these guys who are corner outfielders and may not get their playing opportunities, I think him and Kyler Fedko are two guys that are definitely going to be trying out at first base to see what they can do there and kind of balance things out. I think he's definitely got the better long-term future as being an everyday first baseman in the majors than Fedko does, but they just got to try something out there because Cody Clemens cannot hold that position down just by himself.
No, and Cody Clemens, if you were a good team, maybe on that, gets flipped, gets moved on from, but really they don't have much of a choice, at least for now. And I mean, he came up with big hits, and if you look at his numbers, you take away the on-base percentage. The bang for the buck was there as far as every time he got a hit, it was a big hit. Lots of doubles, a lot of home runs, but probably not a first baseman or utility man on a good team, and that's why the Phillies DFA'd him. So
yeah, I think he's good as a bench player for this team. I mean, if you platoon him with someone at first base where he's maybe getting 2 to 3 starts a week, whether that's first or corner outfield spots or even second base on occasion, I mean, 2 to 3 starts a week compared to every day is definitely a better role for Cody Clemens, and you get a lot more out of him that way.
And the Twins are in a weird spot with a few other prospects. Jose Salas, who was a part of the return for Luis Ariz. Well, what a trade that was. Because the flip side, I don't think the Marlins got all that much for Ariz and their side of the deal. Salas was pretty good at high A, not so good or not so great at AA, but still plenty young. I don't think they're going to add him to the 40, and I don't think anybody's going to bring him up. But I think he'll be someone also to watch. And then, and I never say this guy's name right, Rain Donson, who came over from the Dodgers. He had a tough year health-wise. I think if he had been healthier, we might be talking about him in a different – So I don't think the Twins have any, terribly difficult calls. The thing is, you could convince yourself someone may take like a Kyler Fedko. But then again, if the Twins aren't finding a 40-man spot for him, what other teams are? The Twins are. Even if you're high on the Twins right now, you are aware that they have holes to fill, right? Like they have needs that internally they're going to look to fill before externally, and they're not really looking at Fedko. I don't think. Like if he were to be protected, I would be quite surprised.
Yeah, same with Kalai Rosario. I think you have so many outfielders, and he is someone you do have some high hopes for when he can reach AAA or the majors, but there's just no room for him. Even when you cut away Deshaun Kersey Jr. and Carson McCusker for a couple spots, because again, you want Gabriel Gonzalez for sure in one of those open spots on the 40-man, and then you probably want to add Hendry Mendez, who you acquired. So
two things before I let you go. Today, I learned that Jose Barrios is an infielder in the Twin system. So Jose Barrios, but with an A. I didn't know that today. And then CJ Culpepper, I feel like if things had gone better for him this past season too, we might be talking about a guy who would be getting protected. And if this was kind of I wouldn't say necessarily a lost year, but I wouldn't.
I mean, he was injured for most of the first half, so you can kind of put that as a lost year.
And, there was a time about a year ago that Aram Layton, one of my favorite prospect guys, was talking about him as one of his favorites in the Twins farm system. And maybe a year from now, or even just this upcoming season, we see him get back on the radar. But if things were different, he'd be on this list too. I mean, easy for me to say if things were different, but a year ago you might have said, yeah, he's going to get protected for sure. And now it's very unlikely. So, I mean, at the culmination of all of this, are you thinking 37, 38 roster spots taken up? You got room for a Rule 5er, or if there's a free agent that's really itching to sign early, because sometimes guys are. I mean, are you thinking probably about 38 is going to be the sweet spot before all is said
36, 37, something like that, yeah.
Okay. So, and that will, as you've stated, leave plenty of guys who are still DFA potential outright fodder. So that has been just an excellent breakdown. I appreciate that. If people aren't reading your writing at Zone Coverage or listening to your podcast, who else is on that podcast?
That's Jamie Cameron, who's a prospect guru, draft guru, and Jeremy Nygaard, who also is. I mean, I probably know a lot more about the MLB draft and international free agent signing because of the work that those two put in on their own time as educational professionals, just to really strengthen a lot of Twins fans' knowledge about the minor leagues, the draft, international free agents, whatnot, and just getting excited about prospects in the draft before we really know who they are. Because Jamie looks at this stuff way ahead of time. Like even right now, he's looking at draft eligible guys whose status will change drastically between now and opening day next year. So definitely give that a listen if you're interested in how the minor leagues and whatnot work. So that's the place to go.
Yeah, those are the two go-to guys in addition to Theo for Twins prospects in my point of view. Well, this has been an exceptional almost 40 minutes, and I am just delighted. Again, make sure to follow Theo on all the socials. Find him and his work at Zone Coverage and on Twins Daily on that podcast. Again, he's Theo Tolleson. I'm Brandon Warren saying thank you so much, and we will see ya. You want to say it, Theo?
Nah.
Tomorrow night.
Yeah.